So many times when authors come to speak to me for the first time, they say they want to get their book into a bookstore. Now, if you are publishing on Amazon, that's a pretty fast process. But if you're going to go into a bricks and mortar bookshop, it's a completely different process. It takes strategy, planning, and oodles of patience. So to talk us through some of that process, I've invited Helen from Holyoake Promotions. She is a book publicist that works with some of the prominent brands in South Africa, and she's going to guide our authors through that process, what they need to prepare, what they need to do, and what their correct mindset is supposed to be. Welcome to the show, Helen.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So tell us a little bit about your background. You've got a very rich background in traditional bookstores before you branched out into being a freelance publicist.
Yes, I had experience in traditional publishing, corporate publishing for many, many years. And I was the sales and marketing director for Straight Publishers, looking after this sub-Saharan Africa. So I managed a sales team and managed the marketing portfolio. And at that stage, we outsourced to a publicist. So I kind of that's where I learnt the mechanisms of how an outside publicist would work.
Wonderful. Now that's exactly what we need. You and I have been working on a project together. You work with our team with Reichlen and Earn as our specialist in the publicity world. But publishing publicity is very, very different to normal publicity. Tell us a little bit about those dynamics.
So it's extremely niche. It's not like promoting, I always use the example, Lux soap or Colgate toothpaste, where you sit with a brand that never changes. In publishing, and specifically promoting and publicizing books, you have obviously different genres. So there's always something new. There's always something new to read. There's always something new to learn. And what you have to do as a publicist to get that book promoted in the press or TV or radio, you have to marry it up with the correct presenter or book reviewer. So you have to know the reviewers, number one. You need to know what their specific interests are, and that takes years and years of networking to be able to do that, and that's why it is so specifically niche. I often have authors approach me and go, I know this person in this radio station and at that newspaper or magazine, and then when you approach those people, nothing comes of it because it's not what they do. The fact that they may work at Fair Lady doesn't mean that they're going to review a book for Fair Lady. So it's about you need to know these reviewers really well.
Correct. So when someone comes to you for the first time, is there a little bit of a checklist? What do they need to bring? What are you looking for?
Is this when they come to Holyoake Promotions to do a publicity campaign for their
Yes,
book?
so the very first time.
Very, very first thing that we would need is either a manuscript of the book, if it's in production, so that we can read it and we can evaluate it, because obviously we have very high standards on the books that we work with and the authors that we work with. So we would have to have a very, very good idea about the content of the book. And then at some stage, when we are in agreement, we would need specifics like final book covers, author publicity photographs, author biographies, and lots of little things like timing. You know, when is the book planning to be published? You know, where are you in production? How are you going to print books? Are you going to only have books available online? So if you're going to print books, you would need to look for a book distributor to get the books into those bookshops, it's not an easy process. As you and I worked together on a mutual project, as we discovered.
Yes. So very often people think I can just send the PDF, but it actually works better if you've got the print copy to send through to the reviewer, correct?
So yes, absolutely. The reviewers are still in South Africa, and I work in South Africa. I don't work in international markets. The reviewers here still want a paper book to read. And I've just recently worked on a novella that is only available online, but the publisher printed 20 copies. So we could actually send those books to the reviewers to read, but it's still very much for online purchases only.
Okay, that's very interesting. So people would have to make sure that they've got a budget for print so that they can work with it.
Very inexpensive to run off a digital copies of books or advanced review copies. You know, if you specifically want to get to the press ahead of publication, you know, one can print advanced review copies and send those out for reading purposes. So we do that from time to time, but it all depends on the budget at the end of the day.
Yes.
You know what, especially with independent authors, obviously the publishers that we work with, they have got budgets for those kind of expenses.
So let's just chat a little bit about mindset when it comes to authors. So if we're going to go traditional publisher, the traditional publisher is going to take care of all of those costs like you mentioned. But if it's an independent publisher, what I find is many times when authors come to me, they have achieved a certain level of success in business. And then I shudder to use the word ego because it's a little bit of a negative connotation, but they've generally achieved success by hard drive. They're in the driver's seat, they like to be in control, but now all of a sudden they've got to sit back and wait. And they also have a little bit of an issue with the fact that when they're successful in one industry, it's almost like they assume they're going to be successful in another industry. And we've got to take a little bit of a step back and say, I'm not completely in control of this. What kind of mindset shifts do captains of industry have to have in order to be successful in book industry?
It's huge. It's a massive mindset. I don't know if when last you went into a bookshop. The bookshops are filled with tens of thousands of books, and hundreds of books are published every week, every day. There are new books coming into a bookshop all the time, and to make a book stand out takes a lot of hard work and a lot of publicity, because that book can just drown in amongst. And I think it's very, very hard for authors to accept that. So I always ask them, just go into a bookshop and have a look. Go to the section of the bookshop where your book will be displayed. And you will see that most times books are they spine out, not face out, and it's very, very hard. That's why we work very hard to get books onto promotions in the bookshops where books are for a certain period of time are displayed face out, and that is the way to make people sit up and take notice of this book. But it's not long term, it's very, very short term, because next month they make space for the next lot of new books that come in.
Yes, the flavour of the month.
Well, it's just, that's how it works, and that's how it works in the press. The press are reviewing what's new and trending.
Yes.
They're not, and they pick and choose what they want to review. They've got that editorial independence to decide which books they want to review. So we can, as publicists, stand on our heads and send them gifts, but if it's a book that they're not interested, it's not going to happen. And we're now moving into the second half of the year where a lot of the publishers, their programs are all geared to the Christmas market, because that is the biggest sales turnover for books in South Africa is over Christmas. And they say that people that don't read will buy one book a year and it will be at Christmas time. So I can already see that the reviewers are a little bit over inundated with books. You know, when a journalist says to you, a radio journalist says to you, well, my book show is booked up until November. You know, you go like, well, how do we stand a chance with independent authors? So it's really, really difficult. And the way to do it is to then look at some of the smaller radio stations, some of the online publications where we can get other publicity. It's not just in the mainstream traditional media.
So in terms of the Christmas promotion, I have a lot of people that say to me, oh, they want their book to be out in December. But it's not that you pitch up in December and the book's there. What kind of timelines are we looking at to get the book into a store for December?
So with our largest bookshop chain, Exclusive Books, they have their managers' conference in July, and they look at all the books that have been submitted for Christmas in July. So you can't just in October decide you want to bring out a book for the Christmas market, because you'll miss the boat.
Yes.
So a lot of planning has to go into it. You know, you've got to think long term, and it's frustrating. I know it's frustrating, but it's just the way it is. You just cannot expect space for your book if it's coming out in December. I often ask authors to delay publication until the new year, because in the first few months of the year the publishing programs are much smaller, and it gives authors an opportunity, and there the journalists are looking for books to review. You know, their pages are empty, and so we find that we get bigger space, and more airtime in the first few months of the year.
So it reminds me of that little thing, and I think a lot of people have heard this example. I think a psychologist did a test with little kids, and they put marshmallows on the table, and they looked at the kids who grabbed the marshmallow first, and then the kids who responded to the prompt to wait. And the children that took the marshmallow, that they waited for it, over a time period, they were more successful overall, because they mastered the art of delayed gratification. And I think that that's basically what we're speaking about.
No, it is very much so. It's you know, once you send a book to a reviewer, yes, the reviewer has said, yes, I'm interested in this book. You send that book, but you don't know how many books on that reviewers to be read pile. So there's that, you know, there's a level of patience waiting for that book to be read. Then the reviewer has to write up a review, and then we have to wait for space in print. Online is a lot more, it's a lot quicker. The process is much, much quicker. And we're seeing a lot of publicity coming through online publications now, which, you know, it's still, the Sunday Times still has a print version, but they also have an online version. So we are working in both mediums. But waiting for print space, it's very time consuming.
And then one last question around the whole delayed gratification thing. When people get onto the radio station or into print media, sometimes there's a little bit of a lag after when you've worked with the client to when they actually start seeing results.
So it does. There is a lag. It can take up to 6 months. So we always get a flurry at the beginning of a campaign. So you've seen it with me. The radio comes through quite quickly, but the print, there's always a delay. There's always a delay, and I know sometimes 6 months after I've finished a campaign, I'm still seeing reviews coming through. And it's completely out of our hands. It's just the way it is. Just remember that with publicity, it's not advertising. It's not guaranteed. It's the goodwill that I have with the people that I work with in the media space.
So essentially, everyone, it's all about relationships, and that's why it's good to have a specialist who actually understands those relationships and can help your book get the best success possible. Helen, I want to say thank you so much for being on the show, for casting your pearls of wisdom to us so that our authors can plan better.
Oh, I really, really hope it helps.
It certainly does. Thank you so much. And so remember to subscribe for the next show so that you can find out more of those interesting bits in the book world that can help you thrive as an author.